Welcome to a comprehensive analysis of left-aligned political violence in America, focusing on ideologically motivated attacks, riots, and high-profile incidents from 1998 to 2025. This presentation aims to shed light on the patterns and impacts of such violence across the nation. Our journey begins with understanding the scope of left-aligned political violence, spanning nearly 3 decades. From eco-terrorism in the late 1990s to recent targeted attacks, these events reveal a troubling trajectory of escalating ideological violence across America. The data highlights the urgent need for comprehensive understanding and response. Let's delve into the early environmental extremism, where groups like the Earth Liberation Front and Animal Liberation Front targeted SUV lots, housing developments, and research facilities across the Pacific Northwest, Colorado, and Midwest from 1998 to 2008. These actions marked the beginning of a new wave of eco-terrorism. The shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, sparked the "Hands Up, Don't Shoot" movement, leading to widespread riots and unrest. This pivotal moment in modern civil unrest included arson, looting, and violent clashes with the National Guard, highlighting the deep-seated tensions within the community. The rise of Antifa violence became evident with incidents like the Sacramento riot, Berkeley fires, and Berkeley violence. These events saw Antifa and BAMN counter-protesters engaging in riots, stabbings, and assaults, marking a significant escalation in politically motivated violence. Portland, Oregon, emerged as a focal point for violent confrontations between opposing groups. On August 17, 2019, Antifa counter-protesters clashed with Proud Boys in street brawls involving chemical attacks. This pattern of violence would escalate dramatically, making Portland a hotspot for civil unrest in recent American history. The estimated damage from the George Floyd riots, which began on May 25, 2020, spread to over 2,000 cities nationwide, amounting to $2 billion. This unprecedented civil unrest highlighted the deep-rooted issues of racial injustice and police brutality in America. Beginning May 25, 2020, the death of George Floyd sparked the largest civil unrest in American history. BLM protesters, joined by anarchist and Antifa elements, engaged in widespread arson, assault, and looting. The riots spread from Minneapolis to over 2,000 cities, fundamentally altering the American political landscape. Targeted political violence saw incidents like the murder of Aaron J. Danielson by Michael Forrest Reinl and the vandalism of the CNN Center in Atlanta. These acts of aggression underscore the increasing threat against individuals and institutions, demanding urgent attention and action. BLM protesters and agitators brought riots and fires to the nation's capital, targeting areas near the White House and Lafayette Square from May 29 to June 1, 2020. This unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy represented a dangerous escalation in political violence. Seattle's Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, later renamed Capitol Hill Organized Protest, CHOP, represented an unprecedented takeover of American territory. Armed occupiers established an autonomous zone that experienced 2 shootings and multiple fatalities before authorities finally intervened. Urban warfare spread across major cities like New York City, Chicago, and Los Angeles throughout June 2020. Widespread rioting and property destruction overwhelmed law enforcement resources, requiring massive police and National Guard response to restore order. Portland experienced nightly riots and courthouse attacks by Antifa and anarchist groups for over a year. Federal buildings were repeatedly targeted with explosives, fires, and coordinated assaults, necessitating federal intervention to protect government property and personnel. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem has faced credible death threats and harassment from 2020 to 2025, forcing her to relocate twice. Federal security agencies became involved due to the severity and persistence of the threats, highlighting the personal danger faced by conservative political figures. While the nation focused on the presidential inauguration on January 20, 2021, Antifa protesters engaged in vandalism and violence in Seattle and Portland. Multiple arrests were made as protesters targeted government buildings and businesses in coordinated attacks. On June 8, 2022, Nicholas John Rosk attempted to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh outside his home in Chevy Chase, Maryland. This attack marked a crisis of conscience, reflecting the intense political divisions and threats against judicial figures. Thomas Matthew Crooks attempted to assassinate former President Donald Trump during a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, on July 13, 2024. The attack involved gunfire at a political event, representing one of the most serious threats to American democratic processes in recent history. Luigi Mangione assassinated Brian Thompson, CEO of United Healthcare, in New York City on December 4, 2024. This targeted killing of a corporate executive marked a dangerous escalation in anti-capitalist violence, sending shockwaves through the business community. A 15-year-old student opened fire at Abundant Life Christian School in Madison, Wisconsin, on December 16, 2024, killing 2 and injuring 6. The attack occurred on a church campus, targeting both educational and religious institutions in a chilling act of violence. The year 2025 has witnessed an unprecedented escalation in targeted political violence, with attacks on religious institutions, government facilities, and political figures becoming increasingly common and deadly. Documented attacks have resulted in numerous fatalities, underscoring the urgent need for solutions. On May 21, 2025, Elias Rodriguez opened fire outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., tragically killing 2 Israeli embassy staff members while shouting, "Free Palestine." This attack represented a dangerous intersection of international conflicts and domestic terrorism. On July 4, 2025, anti-ICE militants, numbering 1517 suspects, attacked the Alvarado ICE facility in Texas with fireworks and gunfire, wounding an officer. The timing of this assault on federal immigration enforcement was particularly symbolic, occurring on Independence Day. In July and August of 2025, churches across the United States came under fire. On July 13, unknown gunmen killed 2 women at Richmond Road Baptist in Lexington, Kentucky. On August 27, an unidentified attacker killed 2 children and injured 21 during a Catholic Mass in Minneapolis. The violence continued into September with a shooting at LDS Chapel in Michigan, leaving 4 dead and 8 injured. On September 10, 2025, Tyler Robinson assassinated Charlie Kirk during a Turning Point USA event in Orem, Utah. This targeted killing of a prominent conservative activist demonstrated the increasing willingness of extremists to eliminate political opponents through violence. On September 24, 2025, Joshua Jan conducted a sniper attack at an ICE facility in Dallas, Texas, killing 2 detainees and injuring 1. This precision attack on federal immigration enforcement represented a new level of tactical sophistication in anti-government violence. In June 2025, BLM and Antifa protesters rioted following ICE raids in Los Angeles, engaging in widespread looting and arson. The violence echoed the 2020 riots but with increased coordination and targeting of federal immigration enforcement operations. From October 1, 2025, Antifa and anti-ICE protesters engaged in ongoing riots and arrests at ICE facilities in Chicago, with violence continuing for multiple days. Meanwhile, from October 3, a familiar pattern of riots and tear gas deployment occurred near federal courthouses and ICE centers in Portland, showing persistent anti-government sentiment. Left-aligned political violence has spread across the entire United States, from major metropolitan areas to smaller cities and towns. No region has been immune to this escalating pattern of ideological extremism, with the West Coast, Midwest, and East Coast all experiencing significant incidents. The data shows clear escalation periods, with 2020-2021 representing the peak of widespread civil unrest, followed by more targeted, lethal attacks in 2025. This trend highlights the increasing severity and focus of political violence over time. The analysis of targets in political violence reveals a focus on government facilities, religious institutions, private property, and political figures. These areas have been repeatedly targeted, indicating a strategic approach by extremists to disrupt societal structures and instill fear. The tactics employed by left-aligned extremists have evolved from property damage to increasingly sophisticated and lethal attacks. Early environmental extremism focused on arson and sabotage, while recent incidents involve targeted assassinations and coordinated assaults on federal facilities. The response to left-aligned political violence has varied significantly across jurisdictions and time periods. Some cities have taken aggressive enforcement action, while others have adopted more permissive approaches that may have enabled continued violence. Federal agencies have increasingly become involved as attacks target federal facilities and personnel, suggesting specialized counterterrorism responses are necessary. Beyond the immediate physical damage, political violence has impacted over 2,000 cities, caused more than $2 billion in property damage, and resulted in over 30 documented fatalities. These incidents have contributed to political polarization, erosion of trust in institutions, and normalization of violence as a political tool. The data reveals several concerning trends that suggest continued escalation of left-aligned political violence. The progression from property damage to targeted killings, the geographic spread of incidents, and the increasing sophistication of attacks all point to a growing domestic terrorism threat. Understanding the scope and evolution of left-aligned political violence is crucial for developing effective prevention and response strategies. This presentation has demonstrated a clear pattern of escalation that threatens the foundations of American democracy and security. Addressing this challenge requires comprehensive approaches that combine robust law enforcement, community engagement, and efforts to reduce political polarization while protecting constitutional rights and democratic institutions. The overview of political violence incidents from 1998 to 2025 highlights a long history of unrest and targeted attacks across the United States. From environmental extremism to recent anti-government violence, the timeline shows a persistent pattern of ideological conflict and societal disruption. The timeline of recent political violence events from June 2020 to October 2025 illustrates a series of riots, targeted attacks, and confrontations across the nation. These incidents reflect ongoing tensions and the evolving nature of extremist tactics, emphasizing the need for vigilant monitoring and strategic responses. The recent attacks on religious and federal targets from July to October 2025 underscore the persistent threat of political violence. From church shootings to assaults on ICE facilities, these events highlight the diverse range of targets and the ongoing challenge of addressing extremist actions.